Good evening. We're grateful for all of you who are here to celebrate 10 years with us. And just before we unveil a new platform that we're creating from the Future Awards, I've been asked to preface that announcement with an explanation of how we got here and what we hope for the future. I call it the danger of a simple story, inspired, of course, by Chimamanda. In 2000, the Economist made a bold declaration about Africa. It called us the hopeless continent. We screamed, we protested, some people fainted. Oyinbo people were trying to put us down. They were insulting us. It was time to tell our own stories, etc. So by 2011, the foreign media had gotten the message, and the narrative had changed. Africa, they now declared, is rising. BRICS means N11. The hopeless continent is now bursting with hope. Hope, change, love, joy. The middle class now has more pot-bellies. All of us cheered. Pride restored. Victory secured. Battle won. But what exactly did we win? It reminds me of a dear, dear friend of mine whom I invited last year to come join an effort to battle Ebola. And she said to me, "Oh no, I don't want to be part of any negative narratives of Africa." And I thought to myself, but this is not a narrative something. This is a reality. But there are many of us, maybe we have venture capital for our businesses or funding for our ideas, who scream the same every time. We scream no. That's not the story of Africa. That is poverty porn. That is not Africa's story. There is hope for Africa. Nobody should preach to me about selling hope. That's what we do at the Future Awards Africa. That's been our job for 10 years, telling Africa's brightest and best stories to young Africans. But like we like to joke, the hope where we they sell, they see road, and it's rapper. The fact that many of our over 1,000 nominees over the last 10 years have succeeded in spite of broken down systems cannot blind us to the reality that nations cannot grow based only on outliers. Yes, we will have people who make something out of nothing. They exist around the world, even in nations destroyed by war. But we need a nation that provides opportunity for everyone, not just the strongest. Overheard recently, Africa will not entrepreneur its way out of its problems. We can't entrepreneur around bad leadership. We can't entrepreneur around bad policy. There is a point at which resilience becomes a weakness rather than a virtue. It is not something to be proud of that it takes sweat and blood to register a business name in Nigeria, to open a bank account for the same thing, and to understand our tax laws with no help from our government. It is a problem that needs to be solved. And until Africa has a network of nations where these fundamental imperatives are engaged successfully and sustained, success stories will continue to be a rarity and our continent will simply not grow. As part of the build-up to tonight's event, my colleagues and I toured the northeast of Nigeria. We visited Yola, we visited Mubi, we went to Chibok. Oh, the things we saw. The tragedy is not the stories that you know. It's the ones that we don't even know. It's not the fact that yesterday it became 600 days since the Chibok parents lost their children and still have no news. It's the fact that the armored tanks and the collapsed bridges still lie there, unattended to, unreconstructed. These trips show the strong disconnect between the Africa Rising narrative and the realities on the ground. So instead of simple stories, how about simple reality? That Africa is not a dark continent, but it has more blackouts than any other at this moment. That we protest is not a theater of war, but we've not done enough to stop the leaders who refuse to leave their seats. That it's not a continent of poverty, but we have more poor people with no pathway to rising than any of our peers. It's not a continent of disease, but polio was only eradicated in Nigeria this year. And not because we told better stories, but because a foreign donor worked with local change agents to make it happen. And it did not occur to our government officials who were celebrating this news and claiming credit that the fact that such a simple matter took us so long to solve was a reason for reflection and not backslapping. Brothers and sisters of our continent, 329 million phone users is not growth, it is consumption. 200 million people where there are no roads for them to move goods and services is not a market. Luxury motor shops opening in Lagos is not development, it's alternative reality. We must stop this lowering of the bar where we declare progress for 6% growth rates over the past 10 years, while countries like China have sustained 11% for about 30 years. Because this rising tide has not lifted all boats. What is rising in our midst is the numbers of children who are out of school. 18 million as at the last count. The number of young people living below $2 a day, 72% as at the last count. The percentage of our GDP that goes only to less than 10%. The number of people who have to hold their hands over their heads to get into the Kenya International Airport. And the sheer number of jobless youth, over 75 million aged between 15 and 24, who have no prospects of a job. It is not a sexy story, but it is a true story. And of course, this story can change. And in some countries, like in my favorite, Rwanda, it is in fact changing. And from countries like this come a powerful message of hope. But it is a hope that does not have to come from a lie. The message is simple. Africa can rise. But it can rise only if we can scale up urgently the work that governments and then civil society have to do. Government first, because 1,000 NGOs cannot take the place of a single functioning government. If it can rise when we speak truth to power in government, in civil society, in business, and act on that truth. That promise that Africa's youth, as symbolized by our nominees over the past 10 years and today, represent and can deliver on. But their efforts will not be enough if they cannot scale. If they cannot reach the millions who need their efforts and reach them consistently and sustainably. Because Africa's gargantuan problems need scale. We don't need more NGOs as much as we need more support for those NGOs that are already solving problems. We don't need more politicians, and I'm not particularly one of those that scream that we need more young people in government, more than we need more people forcing governments to do right by more young people. We need to move from hashtagging words to hashtagging. And for this, we need active citizens. We don't need part-time Africans. People who are content to sit in little cocoons and substitute one simple story for another. We don't need part-time citizens. We need the full-time ones. We need a groundswell of active, involved, engaged citizens solving problems at the same time across our continent. That's why the Future Awards Africa is in cities over the next 1 year. That's why we're finding young people who are solving problems across these communities, and we are telling their stories and spreading their action. That's why we're working with our partners to get them all the support that they need and can get. We will train them, we will support them, and we will help them scale. We need full-time problem solvers in our continent. We need a link of arms working together at the same time with all that they have to solve all the problems that we have. Because the Future Awards doesn't want to come each year and celebrate rarities. We don't want to celebrate exceptions. We want to celebrate a surplus of inspiring stories, of hope, of growth, of impact. And to create that surplus, all of us have so much work to do. We have so much work to do. And that might not be the story that we like to hear in our conferences, on our PowerPoint presentations, in our meeting with investors. But that is the story we all need to hear. That our continent needs us desperately, critically, and urgently. Africa needs me, and it needs you. It needs us all. It needs us urgently. Thank you, and God bless you.